I am delighted to be asked here today to introduce the First Minister and hopefully with something that will start the ball rolling as far as a proper discussion about the state of broadcasting and the media within Scotland. There has already, I know, been a lot of discussion in the press, a lot of opinions expressed. I am delighted that there will be, hopefully, I'm sure, a clear vision emerge over the next year or to 2 years. But this is the start of that road, to look at the real state of broadcasting in Scotland. Because the ability to see ourselves as others see us, as I quote Mr. Burns, is a really, really important thing in a nation's cultural ability to actually go on and flourish. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our First Minister and hear his thoughts on this matter, Mr. Alex Salmond. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry about the taxis, Elaine, but I understand there's a great new tram system coming into Edinburgh, and I'm sure that'll sort out all of these problems. And I've always wanted, of course, to have Elaine as my warm-up act during the festival, and now I've succeeded in one of my life's ambitions. But the purpose today is to outline and perhaps provoke a national debate on a subject of enormous importance, and to see how we can take matters forward. It's the start and part of a conversation in which I'm sure everybody in this room and many, many people outside it will want to take part, and where I believe in a fairly short period of time, if we put our minds to it as a country and as a people and as democratic intellects, then we can make fairly substantial progress. August is a wonderful month in Scotland. Of course, never rains, never pours, sun shines, but in particular it's a month where we welcome people from many other countries to the major festivals in this, our capital city. It's a time of year where you feel the cultural conversation of the world echoes through the streets of Edinburgh. And this great city becomes the international capital of creativity and communication, the international capital of creativity and communication. And that's what I want to speak about today. They say the art of government, as opposed to the substance, is all about communication. But as far as this country is concerned, I would actually like to go further than that. I think Scotland is all about communication. This is a nation which loves to express itself, to retell old stories, to share new ideas, to pass on information, to hear what's happening. We communicate passionately with each other, as friends, as citizens, as family. It's a very deep human need, and we feel it particularly strongly in Scotland. It's perhaps not surprising that we didn't wait for anybody else to invent the telephone or television. But while we might always have enjoyed self-expression, we have, at times, and some of us, occasionally lacked a bit of self-belief. And in some measure, I think the broadcasting arrangements that we currently have in Scotland have played a part in that incomplete sense of national self-confidence. I think we have to transform the main framework for communications to become the truly ambitious and creative country that we would all wish to be. Now, clearly, broadcasting has a central and crucial role in our democracy, but also in obtaining the full cultural and economic benefits of our creative industries. Now, that's why my government, this government, supports the devolution of broadcasting powers to the Scottish Parliament. We see the policy as a means to an end, not an end in itself. We want to ensure the principle of editorial and creative control being exercised in Scotland on behalf of Scottish audiences, not by the Parliament and still less by the government, but in Scotland on behalf of Scottish audiences. And we want to create the thriving production businesses, taking Scottish talent onto an international stage. We want proper public service broadcasting for this exciting and re-energised nation. That includes television news and current affairs, which seems to have been shrinking to an alarming degree in Scotland if the industry regulator Ofcom figures are to be believed. It is quite a remarkable position that if people had asked 8 years ago on the resumption, the advent, the reconvening of the Scottish Parliament of a gap of 300 years, if somebody had said in a few years' time we would see a shrinkage a substantial shrinkage of current affairs broadcasting in Scotland, then people would have thought us to be mad. The debate around the Scottish Six, for example, which has been discussed for a full decade now, is actually just a shorthand for a much broader debate we need to have in Scotland about a more relevant and informing blend of television news and current affairs output across our country. Now, I want to speak mainly today about the opportunities associated with broadcasting and television production, and I believe they are at the heart of all our creative industries. A recent report by the Work Foundation for the UK Government's Department of Culture, Media and Sport makes it clear just how important creative industries are. The creative industries now rival in terms of scale and of growth even the financial services sector as one of the key powerhouse industries. A major employer, a huge generator of wealth, one of the keys to the future prosperity of all economies and all countries. One of the things that struck me in the report, apart from the sheer scale and potential of the creative sector, was a short contribution from the writer and producer Richard Curtis, the man behind the movies like Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, events like Comic Relief and Live 8. Now, Curtis has enormous experience and success in this area, and he was arguing about the interconnectedness of the four areas of theatre, radio, television and film. And this is what Richard Curtis had to say. He said, every section of theatre and radio and TV and film feed upon each other. Each depends upon the other. Without the four strong industries, the others would suffer dramatically. Now, I think he's right. I think these activities are undoubtedly interconnected and interdependent. So what do we have to do in Scotland to ensure that these four pillars of creativity are in place and solid and secure and reinforcing each other as opposed to undermining? But I think we can have a fairly high degree of optimism about theatre. As Elaine said, I want to pay full tribute to my predecessor, Jack McConnell, for establishing the National Theatre for Scotland. Even this early in its existence, we can see how it's brought energy and excitement to its performances around Scotland. Most notably, perhaps, Gregory Burke's Black Watch is winning major awards and attracting sellout audiences. It was stunning at this festival last year. And also comedy and all sorts of programmes. Recently, however, we've had some pretty disturbing news about network television production from Scotland. First, the report from Ofcom showed that our total share of UK spending by the big networks has fallen to just 3%, half of what it was a few years ago. And even that wasn't very good. And then we had what can only be described as a simultaneous assault. I'm not saying it was prearranged, I'm not alleging a conspiracy, but almost simultaneously, the BBC Director General Mark Thompson and his opposite number at ITV, the Executive Chairman Michael Grade, argued that instead of explaining or apologising or finding an excuse for the reduction in spending, they said the real reason was the lack of talent and ideas coming from Scotland. Not enough talent, not enough ideas. This is about a country which is achieving international success across the entire range of artistic and cultural endeavour. I don't believe that's the explanation. I don't think anybody, seriously, if they think about it, believes that is the explanation. We would have to accept a position for this to be the explanation, that in just about every field of artistic endeavour, Scots can excel, except when it comes to producing television programmes, where miraculously, somehow there's some deficiency in the Scottish character, which means that the ideas are not coming forward, which explains the dramatic fall in the output from the network in Scotland. Now, I'm sure that neither Mark or Michael were trying to demean an entire nation. I'm sure that wasn't perhaps they hadn't thought it through. I think they need to think again about the trends in the networks in Scotland. Because not only is there talent, there is huge interest in Scottish-based broadcasting where the message is relevant and compelling. Let me give you an example of the 4th of May. The 4th of May is a day very dear to my heart. It was the day after the Scottish elections. And STV took the decision to opt out of the ITN network because of the fairly dramatic developments, a number of counts, and the fairly exciting things that were going on. Now, I can't claim to have been on the couch watching. I was trying to participate in the events as they were unfolding, but I was getting the news. But the most important thing about it is in opting out of the ITN news on that day, and delivering an hour dedicated Scottish news programme, the audience share of STV moved to 30%, or 427,000 people. Customers were voting with their fingers in this digital age, and there was no shortage of alternative viewing in that hour. And that success, a specific example nonetheless, but then we have so few examples to point to it, and there is one, is an example of when a network is responsive to Scottish viewers and Scottish interest, then the viewers respond accordingly, voting with their fingers. It also illustrates the continued desire of people in Scotland for substantial and quality analysis of the issues which affect their lives. Now, I'll be speaking to all of the television networks, including Sky, where there's an enormous contrast, for example, between the new Sky Irish coverage and news and what is offered to Scotland at the present moment. I'll be speaking to them to ensure that they're getting it right, or what their plans are for the right kind of talent and ideas emanating from Scotland, so they can start investing the right amounts of money in Scottish drama and entertainment and documentaries. I'm told that the target for the industry is to have 9% of the network budget spent here in Scotland. That contrasts with the 3% in the Ofgem analysis, or the 6% of a few years ago. Well, that'll do for a start, but we should be regarding that as a floor, not as a ceiling, and we'll work with the broadcasters to pursue the objective of more programmes from Scotland. And we'll be looking for immediate signs of progress. It is not acceptable that the networks which purport to serve the whole of the United Kingdom should effectively marginalise the creative community in Scotland. Now, it was a previous BBC Director General, Greg Dyke, who championed the cause of greater ethnic diversity at the BBC, an organisation which he famously and controversially once described as hideously white. Now, Greg Dyke was absolutely right to identify that issue and begin to deal with it. The challenge now facing Mark Thompson is not just whether the BBC is hideously white, but whether it's also still hideously white city, believing that talent and wisdom reside only in West London. And of course, one of the challenges that we'll have as a country to make sure that we never come to believe that talent and wisdom all reside in the environs of Byres Road. The truth is that Scots succeed at the highest levels in television around the world. That is the reality. We produce talented writers, directors, producers, but strangely enough, they don't just discover that talent in the departure lounge at an airport. So why do many people have to leave Scotland to achieve success? Last year I was in Los Angeles, and I went to the Craig Ferguson Late Late Show. I wasn't surprised that the show was a success because it's a hugely talented performance, but what interested me about the routine that he started his show with was it was all about Waverley Station. Or more accurately, it was about a Welsh rugby fan falling through the roof of Waverley Station. And for those who think that people, to gain and establish an international audience and profile, need comedy subtitles in order to make the message explainable and understandable, they should go and see that show, because he uses his life experience in Scotland as the heart of his comic routine, and it is loved by the audiences in California and across the network. So I don't accept or believe either explanation of lack of talent or lack of communication ability in terms of what people want to hear and see of Scottish output. So what's wrong with the commissioning practices of the UK networks and the framework for broadcasting in Scotland that effectively denies our creative talent a chance to be successful if they so choose, while still living and working in their own country? Let me make it clear today that finding answers, specific answers to that question, is a priority for this government, as we expect others to respond to that challenge as well. Now, moving on to Richard Curtis's fourth pillar of the interconnected industries, a successful and sustainable production base for television drama would in turn help to stimulate Scottish feature films. Some are easy to forget just how many outstanding and successful films have been made by Scots or made in Scotland. Local Hero, I visited Pennin just the other day in different circumstances, it has to be said. I think there's a lot of local heroes in Pennin just now. The Last King of Scotland, Rob Roy, to Red Road, Whiskey Galore, to Harmful. And I didn't even mention Braveheart. A healthy and thriving television production sector in Scotland can act as a stimulant, a showcase for all the arts, especially film and theatre. Broadcasting can truly be Scotland's window in the world, at once bringing us the best of content from every other country and allowing us to show the world what Scotland is capable of creating. As in so many other areas of policy, I believe it can be helpful to look at what has worked elsewhere. In Canada, for example, a nation in which Scotland has so many close interconnections of family and history and friendship, they have adopted some imaginative and far-sighted measures to ensure that they see excellent Canadian programs as well as programs from the United States and elsewhere. They try to balance cultural priorities with industrial development, their desire to see internationally successful media based in Canada. We'll be talking to them and to other countries to see the insights that they can offer Scotland as we try to make progress to excel. And of course, we know that the media landscape is changing very quickly. The demand for creative content is increasing across different platforms, with faster broadband connections, multimedia software, launch of new digital channels. We know, for instance, that the switch over to digital television will release spectrum and create new opportunities for the production and distribution of Scottish programmes. What is also hugely important is staking our claim in the media of the future in order to have the ideas and the content that will build the next generation of media companies. We need to be successful in creating the kind of intellectual property that will enable us to compete and create on a global level. The next Google or Facebook or YouTube or eBay could very well be dreamt up by talented young Scots right now. We need to ensure that they can bring their dreams to fruition and that they can do it here and don't have to leave Scotland to make it happen. Now, if we're going to participate fully in that future, we need to put in place what software designers sometimes call the architecture of participation. That will mean our institutional structures and priorities may have to change. I propose, and I'm announcing today, to establish a Scottish Broadcasting Commission to look into these issues and define a strategic way forward for television production and broadcasting in Scotland. Now, I don't think it's a good idea for politicians to design television programmes, but what we can do and should do and must do, and it's our duty to do, is design the policies. And by implementing the policies, we help create an environment where talented people can do great things and significant dynamic creative companies can be born and built for this generation and for the next generation. That means having the infrastructure, the skills, and the education. It also means having a clear vision. We need to identify the opportunities, provide the resources. There's no shortage of issues, and I intend the new Commission will begin work in the autumn and report as soon as possible to me and indeed to the Scots Parliament. So I'm delighted to be able to announce that Blair Jenkins, recently Head of News and Current Affairs at BBC Scotland, a former Director of Broadcasting at Scottish Television, has agreed to chair the Commission. After discussions with Blair, I'll announce in the next few days the terms of reference and the full membership of the Commission. But let me be clear, it will combine substantial industry expertise with a broad spectrum of political opinion. People not just united by a view that something needs to be done, but also people with the knowledge to identify which initiatives will actually work. Now, we know from international work that there are clear linkages between having a successful creative industry sector and having an innovative, modern, successful economy. But it's about more than just that. It's about national self-confidence and self-expression, about Scotland being a vibrant centre for innovative and creative content. There are great opportunities from emerging international markets, the internet, digitalisation, convergence. In the end, television is about the generation and exploitation of intellectual property. And any genuinely knowledge-based economy must be having to create that kind of content. Scotland needs a new framework of investment and cooperation to grow our screen industries and make them world-class in their innovation and output. Scotland, as much as any other nation, needs to be a society dedicated to learning and communication. Now, if we have a national determination to encourage our creative talent, then we can build television services and production businesses which are genuinely world-class. We need to galvanise not just our broadcasters, but also our schools, our universities, our arts companies, our writers, our producers, the emerging talent. Broadcasting, perhaps more than any other form of media, reflects the sense a nation has of its own communicative and expressive ability. There may indeed be those who lack self-confidence in Scotland's talent and creativity, but you won't find them in this government. We want to see Scottish-produced drama being successfully nationally and internationally. We want agenda-setting documentaries and current affairs. We'd enjoy more great comedy. We could all do with more of that. The Scottish Parliament cannot provide all of that, you know. We'd like some big television debates on national and international issues. We'd love to capture the definitive performances by some of our exceptional musical talent. We can and must get great television programmes from Scotland to a global audience, just as we are doing so clearly in music and other arts. And we know that releasing that creativity connects to our wider social and economic objectives for Scotland. Now, there are a wide range of responsibilities to reflect the diversity of Scottish culture, not least in relation to the Gaelic language. Let me today restate my support for a dedicated Gaelic channel. The launch is planned for the coming year and will initially deliver 1.5 hours of new content every day. It will also, incidentally, by doing so, deliver a shot in the arm for the independent production sector in Scotland. I know that there has been some slippage in the project, but I believe this is an area where the BBC is committed to this happening without further delay. However, this welcome development, and it is a vital and important part of our broadcasting architecture, is not a substitute for the rest of the structure. Incidentally, for those who doubt that we have the capability and the technology, as well as the talent, to devise a Scottish Six, perhaps they should reflect on the fact that the BBC already produce for S4 Wales a Welsh language. They produce a Welsh language effective news bulletin at the present moment. I also acknowledge and look forward to the opening of the official opening of the BBC Scotland's new headquarters at Pacific Quay. But I think everybody understands, as well as the shiny new buildings, we must also have the programme content to match the building. So we're keen to take action, but we're also keen to listen to the ideas of others on what we as a government can do to help. That shouldn't be too much of a problem. Incidentally, as I said when I began this speech, this nation likes to talk. I've said that we need an architecture of participation, and I know that many, many will participate. Together, we're going to talk about our ambition, our vision, about how we transform Scotland all year round into a world-class centre of communication and creativity. And in the meantime, enjoy the August sunshine and our great festivals. Thank you very much.